I love it. All right. And here we are. Welcome to today's Search Engine Journal webinar. Excited to have you spending this time here with us. I am joined with Wayland Myers, CEO of MarketPage. Wayland, thank you so much for joining us for your first SEJ Today webinar.
Thanks for having me. It's going to be good.
Or webinar today. I guess I got that a little backwards, but yeah, it is going to be some good stuff. So for everybody out there joining us, we are here to talk about ways that you can unlock Google and really maximizing organic traffic for bigger e-com sites. So I'm going to get into it. I'm going to do some housekeeping, but first I want to let everybody know we're going to have a breakout room at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to stay here with Wayland. We'll do some Q&A, but if you want to, you can join Tyler, Bryce, and Carter from MarketPage, who are going to be in there talking about their solution. If you have any product specific questions after we get through the presentation, want to learn anything more about them and see some live examples, we'll have that open. So stay here with us for the presentation first, and then we'll get that breakout room running. Okay. In the meantime, use the chat. Let us know where you're coming in from. I'm going to do some quick housekeeping, and then we're going to turn this over to Wayland. So if you need closed captioning, use the little CC in the top right of your screen. Just give that a click. We are going to do a Q&A at the end, like I said. So if you have questions for Wayland, put those in the Q&A tab. If you see a question that you like, give it a little thumbs up. That'll let us know it's important to you all out there, and we will do our best to front load those at the end. Before you leave today's call, we do have a post-webinar survey. It lets us know how the event went and what we can do to make them better. So you want to stick around for that. And lastly, you will receive today's recording and the slides in your inbox. So watch for that this afternoon. With that, I'm going to get out of here. Wayland, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, we got a lot of ground to cover today. I really appreciate everybody coming and hope we can get a lot of good information fed into your brains out there. And I think what's really going to be fun to talk about is I see a huge opportunity out there for a lot of e-commerce sites, especially major e-commerce sites that are really big, have lots of deep categories and lots of different facet combinations, things like that, to really get more market share. Like if you have the right combination of content, SEO optimizations, and internal linking, I think there's a lot more you can unlock on your own existing website. So let's get into that. And first, I'll tell you a little bit about myself so you understand where my experience lies. So primarily, I've been working with large-scale enterprise companies for the last 18 years, doing all kinds of different advanced SEO tactics. Mostly it's large scale. We're looking at primarily lots of pages, lots of content, lots of linking solutions, anything that's a huge site-wide kind of data-driven tactic. That's what I specialize in, and that's what excites me the most. All of these companies that we've worked with for this time have been in really competitive markets. I've gotten to work with some of the best SEOs out there, and it's been a real privilege. And that experience has gone into the kind of the products that we've created over time. And the tools that we built are for, as I said, large-scale content creation, internal link optimizations. And so we've done a lot of test and learn with those tools and really seen how that can be effective, especially for large e-commerce sites. And now we're even integrating AI into this to enhance that content and link generation solution. So it's an exciting time, and I think we've got a lot to share today to get you guys into this. All right, first, SEO is hard, right? We all know that there's no easy day in the job of an SEO. Your search market is big. The business sometimes doesn't realize how many people you're trying to reach. And so it's definitely a challenge that you always have to face. You don't sometimes have the internal resources or the engineering expertise you need to do these kind of large scale tactics that we're going to talk about today, or to get the advancements onto the platform that you want. Sometimes people run into this all the time. It's really hard to create good content at scale. AI is out there and it's tempting to use, but how do you use it? Can you use it, effectively without getting yourself into trouble? A lot of our e-commerce platforms that people are on, whether it's Squarespace or it's something else that's custom built, often don't have the features that you need, and that can be really tough because it takes a lot of time to get the engineering resources and so on lined up to support you. And lastly, AI is here. AI overviews are coming more and more into search results. Our friend Matt Southern here just recently posted an expansion of AI into the European markets now. It's going to be continuing to infringe upon the top 10 results, and how do we combat that? So we're going to cover some things like that today as well. So first, let's get into how big a search market really is. How big is that ocean that I'm talking about? And what I mean by this is, typically people looking for what you're offering on your website, whether the products in the categories of products and services, There's two kinds of searches. There's the high level, top or head term searches, and then there's the long tail searches. And we're all probably pretty familiar with that being SEOs, like, benches versus a 6-foot outdoor wooden bench, right? There's quite a difference in there. But if you think about it from the highest perspective, that's literally sometimes millions of keyword combinations that your site needs to try to rank for. It's a big, big job. But the good news is that there's more total search volume in that market together if you can go after it. And that's the kind of tactics we're going to talk about today. How big are we talking about? So one of our clients, Advanced Auto Parts, we did a study for them about 2 years ago. And looking at people who are just looking for auto parts as an example, people search by year, make, model. They add part category names, brake rotors and front brake pads and windshield wipers. They do brand names, mobile oil, whatever, part numbers, specs, local searches. They're looking to pick up a part near them, things like that. So at the end of the day, this market alone, we estimated, had over 51 million keywords that people were using on an annual basis, and just a little bit over 35 billion in total search volume if you could look at the whole picture. We looked at all of the big competitors you see there on the right to come up with these estimates, and then put some algorithms in place to kind of get us to this final number. Then I'm talking about those like long, deep keywords, serpentine belt for my Mazda 3 or whatnot. All of those combinations are what we're going after. So it's a big job. But what I've seen a lot, and this is where we're here to talk about, is there are some pretty common problems that get in the way of e-commerce sites getting after all of those combos and those deep searches. The first one I see a lot is there's a lot of folks that are no indexing multi-filter combo pages. So those deeper pages that are multiple combinations, that 60-inch wooden bench. Sometimes these pages are no index, and sometimes for a good reason, but that means that all of those deeper combos are not maybe getting used. The pages aren't even on Google. So how could you rank for those kind of things very well? And that happens very, very often. We're going to talk about how you can solve some of that. A lot of times we see dupe content getting created because people just cannot create enough content for all of those deep combinations. So they either end up with no content or duplicate content for maybe a higher level category. And that doesn't help rank for those deeper long tail keywords either. I see a lot of incorrect management of rel canonical URLs. It depends on how you're doing your site, but you need typically one page that you can focus on and focus Google's attention on. And if you can't do that, or if you're signaling to Google there's a bunch of other pages that are really about the same thing, that can be a challenge. Not optimizing the search results pages. So every single e-commerce site has some kind of a search result page internally where people can filter and get a list of product results, or they can do an internal search on the search bar box. You get a list of products. I see often that those pages are lacking the most basic SEO optimization. Stuff that we all probably are aware of is happening, but it's still a pretty pervasive problem, and that's definitely getting in the way of a lot of ability to go after that deeper and broader market. Finally, missing unique content. So typically everybody starts out with trying to focus on their highest level category pages and making sure there's content there. And that's great, and you should do that. But the biggest opportunity, because everybody's doing that, is really to try to get as fast as you can down deep. If you can get that unique content down deeper in those longer tail keywords, that's where I think the big opportunity can lie. But that can't be the only thing you do. Content's a big deal, but we see a lot of people with no internal linking going to some of those deeper category pages for various good reasons, but it's still a requirement to really make that successful. Okay, but there's hope. So with Advanced Auto Parts, since 2015, we've been doing these tactics. We've created over 13 million SEO landing pages to cover all of those types of searches in their market. And today, our pages with this strategy we're going to talk about here drive over 53% of organic traffic for Advanced Auto. And we rank on over 123,000 page one keywords with a total of almost 900,000 total keywords. And we're still growing that all the time, right? It's a constant effort, but this is possible. You can get a much bigger market share by doing this kind of stuff. And there's more. With AI coming in, you're seeing not only the hot head terms like, the top 10 type of keyword, the head term keywords like benches for sale compared to 6-foot outdoor wooden bench. The top 10 is getting pretty occluded with not only AI results now, but also all the other featured snippet stuff. So that often you see things like this where position 1 is at the very bottom of this page. So that's a lot of ground for a user to scroll. But what's exciting and why I think this is an opportunity is that often for deeper, longer tail keywords, the first position rankings are much higher up in the page. There's a lot less of that featured snippet stuff going on. And we're going to show you how to get there. All right, this is basically the key. If you can put these three things in place on your search result pages, on your deeper filter combination, multifaceted filter pages, these are the things that I think have to happen. Basic SEO optimization, as I mentioned, targeted unique content, internal linking, making sure those pages are getting enough links with the right kind of anchor text, and that will increase your reach deeper and broader into your market. And I can tell you this because we've done it, and also I see a lot of opportunity out there with big brands that are not doing it. So that means there's opportunity for you guys. So often e-commerce sites are missing one or more of these, so we're going to want to make sure that we get you there with these tactics. So let me move on to the examples. First of all, common ways of people doing it now on e-commerce sites. There is a way to do it right and a way to do it wrong. Most e-commerce sites are doing one of these two tactics. They're either using an SEO landing page or they're using a search result page as their SEO target pages to rank in Google. I'll show you what I mean by that. So an SEO landing page is an example of Pottery Barn. They have dedicated pages that are about, like this case, sleeper sofas. So this single page up here on the right is a dedicated SEO landing page for this keyword, and this is what ranks. They also have a search results page, so someone can go into potterybarn.com and click on some filters and get to the same result or a page focused on the same thing. But this is the page they're trying to target. So that's what I mean by an SEO landing page. It's often a separate, dedicated page outside of your typical search engine or search result pages on your site. So search result pages can be one of three types from what I see most often. You can either have a dynamic page where somebody types in a keyword into the search box at the top here, and then a page is rendered based on whatever they type into that box. You can have a filter page. So when someone's clicking on a filter, as they click each filter, a new set of products loads. Or you can have what I call the apply approach to a multi-filter page, where they click on multiple filters and then have to click apply, and then they're taken to a search results page. So it's important to distinguish those three because they are different and you have to deal with them differently. So let's take a quick poll. Which tactic are you currently using on your e-commerce site? Are you doing the dynamic search result page as your SEO targeted page, or a filter page, apply page? Are you using SEO landing pages, or are you doing some kind of a combination between those two? I'll turn that over to the team here to take the poll.
And that should pop up for everybody. And we'll give it a second to, oh, we got 100% people saying both SEO and search results. Oh, there we go. Now it changed. So yeah, most of them are hovering in SEO landing pages and both SEO and search results.
That sounds right. I mean, that's pretty common out there. There are a few sites that only rely on their filter pages, but I think as SEOs, we run into a couple of things where it's really hard to get our engineering team sometimes to optimize those pure filter type pages. And as we'll see in a minute, there's good reasons why. So that's great. Good to know. All right, let's take a look at some examples of what big brands are doing out there so you can see what I mean. So big e-commerce sites do have a lot of ground to cover. Like in this case, Pottery Barn, there you can see there on the right, there's maybe 7 or 8 big categories. Then there's subcategories under each, and then child categories under that. And then you combine that with 10 to 20 filters, you're going to have a lot of combinations, which means our job is hard. We've got to think about how to optimize thousands to hundreds of thousands of pages, and that's what we're going to get into. Just to get some vernacular down, when I go through this, I use things like 1F, 2F, 3F to kind of explain which level I'm talking about. So if somebody can apply a 3 filter combo, it means they're using, with the category sofas, they're using something like upholstered 60-inch sleeper. I'm going to go into this next. So here's Best Buy. All right, so I created a summary slide for each of these brands. I'm not going to read all the stuff on the left, but I'm going to describe here on the right what this grid does. What I'm looking for is at each of these levels, these 4 levels of filter combo pages, are they indexable? Is there a single canonical URL? Are the on-page factors, the page title, the H1, the meta description, things like that, even the H2s, are they aligned with the keyword target, the filter combo? Is there unique content? Is there related cross-linking? So, linking to sibling categories. So, black Nike tennis shoes to brown Nike tennis shoes, right? Those are sibling related categories. Is there that kind of linking? And then additionally, is there just generally enough internal inbound linking coming to these pages at all these levels? So there's enough links coming from other pages to these pages. Now, in the case of Best Buy, they've got all of their one filter URLs covered pretty well, which makes sense. Most of the big brands we look at tend to do a decent job at that level because it's a pretty big keyword like electric dryers. But then when it comes down to the second and third and fourth levels where we start seeing things break down pretty quickly, which I think will come as no surprise. But in this case, Best Buy has a couple of different pages for the same thing. And we see that they don't have canonical URLs controlled. Their on-page factors are a little bit off and on, and then their unique content is sometimes there, sometimes not. And it's because it's hard. Right? It's hard to generate that content. Related cross-linking is generally not happening. I don't see that there in that way. And then internal inbound links, definitely not at the lower levels for sure. So here's an example. If you take a look at LG electric dryers, there are actually 3 different URLs that you can get to that are all indexable for the same filter combo. Each of these numbers here will link to those pages, so you can take a look at them afterward if you'd like to. And then there's a 4th page, and this is actually the page that ranks on Google for LG electric dryers. That's actually the level up. And I think the reason that the LG dryers page, as opposed to one of these 3 pages, which is a lot more targeted, is ranking is Google sees 3 pages competing with each other, and that's going to diminish the effectiveness of these 3 pages to be really focused and kind of confuse Google. And there's no content and there's no internal links on those pages, so that always helps, or doesn't help, I mean. So second example was stackable LG dryers. So it's another it's a 2 filter combo. There again are 3 different pages that this can rank for. The ranking URL is one of those 3 pages, and I think that that they do have some optimized on-page factors, so that is helpful. And I think this page just happens to have the most optimized on-page factors, although it doesn't have any content or other internal links that I was able to find. So it's not ranking great, but it's still it is doing it. So this is a problem. You want to give Google a single page to focus on if you possibly can. The other thing that you can see clearly, if you look at all 3 of those stackable pages that I just showed you, is that all of them are missing content. What they do show is, the same list of products basically, and then there's no content, no internal links. So I think that's why they're not getting as good a ranking. And then if you look at, so why is this important? Right? This is really a good example. If you compare Best Buy and Home Depot on the same page, targeting the same keyword, well, what's really, why is unique content important? Because there really isn't a difference between these 2 pages. I mean, there's probably subtle differences in the on-page factors. There's obviously domain authority that comes into play. But if you could, get beyond just having only a list of products on your page, you can, I think, outpace your competitors. Unique content can really be that unique differentiator. If you've got FAQs, if you've got paragraphs, if you've got tables or charts or anything, or reviews or anything like that you can add and summarize about that group of products, that's going to differentiate you, especially when you're competing with other domains that have a similar domain authority. And especially in the age of AI, which we're going to talk about a little bit more, having that deeper content, more context-rich content is going to be really important for getting into AI results and being cited as a source of information. All right, so taking a look at Pottery Barn, let's kind of move to another site here. Here, they have got an indexable first filter, but they, for the most part, no index everything that's beyond that. So any of these like 2 combos or 3 combos, they're not going to be able to rank for because they've no indexed them. Now, they're doing it for a good reason, right? I mean, they shouldn't index them in this case, because when you take a look at all of the problems here, like no unique content, there's no cross links and things like that. And we'll go into a couple examples here so you can see why I think that's actually smart for now, but this is definitely their opportunity. So first of all, they've got an SEO landing page that I showed you earlier for sleeper sofas. But if you take a look at the second page, right, that's also indexed. So what I see people doing a lot that is the right thing to do is to make sure that you index your search result pages if you have a corresponding SEO landing page. That's probably the first thing I would do if that's something that you seem to face, because then you're just immediately removing competition from your site in the eyes of Google. And then, of course, the canonical URL ideally should point from this filter page here to the SEO landing page. I know that's easier said than done because there's a lot of complexity in some of these filter applications, but that's nonetheless the goal. Okay, so let's go even deeper. Let's go down to an upholstered 60-inch sleeper sofa, a 3-filter page here. What we see going on here is the URL and the page title are unique. So you can, I mean, you can't see it here, but you can see over here, I captured the title and the H1 and all that, they are unique. But, well, sorry, the H1's not unique, but the URL and page title are unique. They do match this keyword. But there are multiple H1 tags. If you look over here, the H1 for this page is sofas. There's nothing here at all, and there's another one for sofas. So wisely, they are no indexing and no following this page. That's why I said it's a good idea, because until they can fix that, they should definitely not index this page. And now, one thing I did want to point out, though, is that a lot of sites do no index these pages, but they often no follow them as well. I don't think that is the right treatment. I would recommend doing a no index and a follow. Because Google, even though they won't index the page, they will crawl the page, and then we'll go through the page, and you want to pass any link juice from that page through on to the other pages, like the products that are listed on that page. So there's really no harm in having a follow tag. All right, moving on here. So this is an interesting one where they have an SEO landing page for blue outdoor rugs, and this is the page that's in Google. It's not ranking very well, but I can find this page in Google. And then they have their filter page down here. Now, what's odd about this, and this is something you need to be cautious about, is if you look at this landing page, this H1 and this title here is a little bit weird, right? What this makes me think is that they're using an auto-generated system. When people type in a search term into their search box on the site, if there's enough people that have typed that in, or there's various rules around that, then a page can automatically get created using that keyword that someone has put in. Well, people put in all kinds of weird stuff in your internal search. And so this often leads to very poor SEO landing pages where they're not really optimized for the right keywords. They don't have content, things like that. And in this case, like it's missing a description. It's very important that if you're going to do the SEO landing pages, that you can control all of those factors, like what's on the page, what are we targeting, and everything. Because even their filter page has a bit better titles and things like that. And this is not indexed. Sorry, that is indexed, but the deeper ones are not indexed. So, all right, looking at the outdoor rugs one. So this one here is more about internal links. So this is where I want to make sure that everybody understands the importance of when you do this, you have to have that trifecta. You need to have the content, you need to have the basic SEO, but you also need your site to be telling Google, this page is important. It's important enough to rank. And the best way to do that is giving a page enough internal links. So in this case, what's interesting is on the outdoor rugs page, there's a link to indoor outdoor rugs, but it doesn't point to this page. It points to this page, hallway runner. So there's a mismatch there. So something's going on in that system that's not actually matching the intended keyword to the correct page. Very important that you do that. Okay, so into Adidas.com. So Adidas is doing a lot of good things. I think Adidas is on their way. And this is an example of like, if they're doing it, maybe you should pay attention too, because Adidas is one of the better sites in terms of how they do their SEO and optimize things from what I've seen. So in this particular case, they've got all their one filter pages checked, no problem. Even their two filter pages are indexed. They often have one canonical URL. They have aligned on page factors. They don't always have unique content, but that's usually a work in progress thing. And so, definitely there are filter categories that they maybe don't need it as much, or it's not as valuable. But when people say that, like, remember, that's the long tail. Like, anybody says not as valuable, what they're really talking about is that it's not as valuable as something else. But if you could do that through thousands of keywords or even hundreds of thousands of keyword combos, you're going to have a better chance of winning on some of those keywords. Maybe not everything, but it's about going big, right? Let's go at large scale approach and throw a wider net out into the ocean of Google and see if we can catch more fish. So they're doing pretty well. On the 3F and 4F pages, they have no indexed those on purpose. But they have the pathway paved, like they have a canonical URL. And this is because they're using the apply search result pages method, which I'll talk about a bit more later. But that guarantees you have a single canonical URL, and that's pretty valuable. They mostly have on-page factors aligned at the 3F level, but they're not quite there at the deeper levels. Unique content, again, mostly it's missing at these lower levels. But these are pretty valuable searches. If you do men's running shoes size 9, like that's a pretty valuable keyword. And if you do that for women, and you do that for kids, and you do that for all those other combos, they definitely, I think, want to get there. I think that's what they're trying to do. So here's an example of, for instance, where they're at right now. And you might see this on a site that you run right now. There's a men's size 9 black running shoes. So there's 4 filters on here. On purpose, they're no indexing, but they are following. So that's a great thing. They do rank in position 8 on the men's white running shoes. So that's not a size 9 page because they don't have that page indexed, but they rank in position 8. Could they rank in higher positions if they did have that page indexed? I would say yes. I think they definitely have the domain authority, and they just need the content again and the internal linking so that we're not, when we're here and we've got all these filters selected, it's actually showing all of the size 9 data involved or on the page as well. Okay. There is also duplicate content on both of these URLs, men's running shoes and men's size 9 running shoes. Again, they're not indexing this page, so that's why they're not indexing, is they haven't yet gotten content down here to be unique. That's very common, but make sure you're only doing that if you're no indexing. There are a lot of sites I see where they are indexing both of these levels and they still are using the same dupe content. In my opinion, it's better not to have the content at all on a deeper page if it's supposed to be if it's competing with this one, because this page is a much more valuable keyword, and in these markets with the level of competition you're facing, you can't afford any kind of a dupe content penalty. You need to just focus on where you're going to be good. All right, they're related internal links. They have a similar situation where in this case though, I found situations where these are pages that are both indexed, and the internal linking block at the bottom of the page is the same, and it's linking to the same pages. That's okay. There's nothing particularly wrong with that, but it's a lost opportunity, because if you can actually differentiate the links on each level, then you have a lot more link inventory on your site to use to give more internal links to more pages. So, as soon as they open up their 3, 4 filter and 4 filter levels, hopefully they also address making these links unique and giving themselves more link inventory to point at those new pages. Okay, so I think it's a big opportunity out there. Not many brands are actually going for this 3 filter, 4 filter combo. So if you can do it, I think you have a very good chance of getting yourself into some of the same search results as these bigger brands. These guys, all of them, Amazon, Nike, Nordstrom, and Dick's Sporting Goods, are all ranking a 2 or 3 filter page and not the size 9 page. They don't have that page. So if you did, and I've seen this happen, you could maybe squeeze in there, but it depends on the keyword. Again, everything's a different level of competitiveness, but I think it's a big opportunity. So if you have that content, I think you may be able to get there. All right, here's an example of what a complete page does look like. So as our client with Advanced Auto Parts, we can show you like what we do is we create an SEO landing page that has all of the factors ticked, and we do it for all of their levels of category plus all the filter combinations we can. And that gives them that. I mean, it's a lot of pages, right? It's 13 million pages. So you have to have a way to manage that. And there are ways to manage that either with like tools like ours, or some of the bigger e-commerce platforms can create that volume of pages. But you obviously need to do the work internally and in-house to make sure you can support the content, internal linking, and optimizations at every level. But we've got, all of the different pieces in place, from the different kinds of content to product links, everything that you need to make sure that a page is really looking like it's complete. And Google can look at that and go, yeah, we can, let them rank for this deeper search exactly and do well. All right, so things to consider about each of these solutions. Which tactic is better? So let's get into like talking about search result pages versus SEO landing pages a little bit. For some of you, you're not going to have a choice in these tactics because you may have internal platform limitations. So it can't do an SEO landing page, or maybe you can't optimize, a search result page. There could be definitely resource limitations. We see that all the time, where engineering is focused more on the specific product that your company is building and not on marketing pages or marketing content. And then there's a lot of times where there's expertise limitations, where the engineering team, even though you try to explain to them what you want, they don't really know how to build it. They don't understand the caveats of making sure you've got fast page load speed, schema markup, all the different kinds of things that you want to make sure are included in whatever you produce and whatever you're putting out there. From a purely SEO perspective, though, to answer the question of what's better, really, what's best is just a single permanent page. It's the ideal solution. And the good news is that you can do that with either one of these approaches. You can do it with search result pages. You can do it with SEO landing pages if you do it right, which is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. Let's talk a little bit about SEO landing pages. How do you make sure that these are working well? Obviously, you need to have the volume of pages. You can start with your first filter, but if you can get down to 4 filter, the fastest you can get down, you may not even want to start that deep, actually. There are clients that, if you think about like your market, if you've already got competitors that are all doing the first filter level, well, maybe you should go to the lowest level and do the fourth level or third level first, because you have an opportunity to get higher up in those rankings before they do, and they're not doing it. It's not a bad plan. It's throwing a much bigger net. It's deeper in the ocean of Google, yeah, and you're going to get smaller fish, but you may get a lot more smaller fish that add up to basically big results. But with this particular approach, SEO landing pages, you do want to make sure that you are no indexing any competing search result pages on your site. That's definitely a high priority. What you got to have on these things is you need varied types of content. So, not just one paragraph that was written by AI. There's definitely a problem with that. I'll talk about that in a minute. You want paragraph content, you want FAQs, you want any other kind of varied form of content you can put structured data around. It could be a table, it could be charts, it could be a list of products or a list of whatever it is that you're selling there with good schema markup on it. You want your product data on that page. You want prices. You want review summaries. You want features of the products. Anything that's relevant to that subset of products that you're going to talk about on that SEO landing page. That's what you want in the content in varied ways. You want obviously conversion opportunities. You need a list of like best-selling products and best-rated products, and that should be pretty obvious, but you definitely want to have that. And you really want those cross-links from other non-filtered category pages. So what I mean by that, it could come from other filtered pages too, but you definitely need enough cross-linking going between your SEO landing pages so that there is a shared link juice and a shared relevance happening. When Google crawls into one of those pages, it sees, oh, there's all these other pages that are similar. So therefore, this site, this domain has some topical authority, has breadth and depth to what they know about this set of products. And then make sure there's enough links going into these pages that they're getting a clear signal to Google that, hey, minimum, I would say 5 to 8 to 10 links inbound to one of these pages is critical from other pages on your site. So the key challenges when doing this is obviously generating a lot of them, right? So you have to do that programmatically somehow. One at a time will take way too long, especially if you're doing a strategy where you're trying to get all these 4 filter combos. So you need some system or some solution to generate that at scale, as well as the content that each of them needs. It needs to be unique. It can't be too thin. It's really important that you have a good content solution, which we'll talk about in a second. All the related cross-linking is hard to do sometimes because that's a different functionality. You have to have some metadata about these are all the pages I have. These are the keywords that are related to those pages that we can use to link to those pages, things like that. And then, of course, you need to get some engineering or business support, or you can work with a vendor like ourselves to do this kind of a thing. But these are the things that you've got to address. For search pages, the keys to success are, first of all, before you index any level, any 1, 2, 3, or 4 filter level, is just address those SEO optimization at a minimum. Even if you don't have any content on those pages yet, you'll have some success as long as your page title, your URL is unique, your meta description is right, your H1 is right, and off as many H2s as you can get to be actually relevant to the page, as opposed to using header tags, which I see this a lot. People use header tags a lot for navigational elements, like sort this, list that, like stuff that doesn't make any sense or has no relevance to the actual content that you're trying to target or the keyword you're going to try to target. You want to definitely use your headers for only keyword relevant kind of stuff if you can. You want to fix any multiple competing URLs. So again, if you're going to use search pages, try not to have 3 or 4 of them that are really targeting the same thing. And make sure before you index, you also do these things. Like what I just said, this is a canonical page. Same as before, you have varied types of unique content. That's ideal. It is not critical to getting some success, though. Again, you can put them out, but definitely having the content differentiates you from your competitors much more quickly and will help a lot more with AI results. Having the related cross-linking, some of the key challenges, fixing those canonical URLs, because often the URLs that are created from a search result filter page are long parameterized URLs, and there can be multiples of them, and there can be multiple ways to get there, and that can be a challenge from an engineering standpoint to get those done right. Maybe you're going to modify how your filtering works. So updating that filter behavior of the widget is a bit of a challenge. I'm going to talk about that in the next slide or two. Generating the unique content that can then show up on all of those filter combos and all of the internal linking that can show up. That's obviously a challenge you need to get over with search result pages or SEO landing pages. Okay, let's talk about the search result pages, the different methods, because I think this is really helpful stuff to understand about maybe you want to make this recommendation to the business to make some changes like this. So the first method, this dynamic method, where you can type whatever. So whenever I typed like cheap LG dryers here, and it basically created a page about cheap LG dryers on the fly. This page was indexable. It's kind of optimized, it has that keyword in the title. But here's the big problem is that if you do this, I super recommend you no index these, because what can happen is people typing in cheap LG dryers, and they might type in really cheap LG dryers and kind of cheap LG dryers and the cheapest LG dryers. You end up creating all these indexable pages that are super similar and or just about random keywords that aren't that important. And if they start getting indexed, it can really pull down the overall quality of the site. So you really want to be careful about allowing this kind of a free form page creation to be indexable. You definitely need to control that. We've had to help some really big e-commerce sites out there figure out a solution to kind of rein that back in and no index a bunch of those pages, and it's really complicated. Staples had that problem. We've seen others have the problem that I can't mention due to NDA. The filter method. Let's talk about that one. So this is where people can click on filters one at a time and it renders a page. So the problem with this method mostly is that users can take different paths. So they may start with one filter and then click on a second filter in different orders, or they may go down a different tree and then add the same basic filter combo somewhere else. And so you can make this work better if you can get to a single canonical URL that you can then optimize. But sometimes it's pretty hard because you can't really make it do just one. This is my favorite method. This is what I think can be the most effective, the apply method, because basically what this does is that it forces a user to click on the filters they want and then apply, and then you can generate a single URL. This, I think, is the ideal approach, and it's the ideal hybrid between a search results page and an SEO landing page, because you have one URL. You know how to optimize it. You only have to work on one set of features. You only have to support that one page. I believe it's a better mobile experience because people on a phone can easily click filter, apply, and then they get their result. And that it saves in load time and all that. It's just that one page to manage. It's easier to do your internal links because you kind of have exactly what URLs are we going to be able to create with each of these combinations. And you can also do cleaner, less, maybe or even non-parameterized URLs. There is definitely some noise out there about Google wanting to deal with parameterized URLs because it's bloating their crawl budget. There's all these URLs that are too similar. They really are the same page, but just slightly different parameters, as I showed you on Best Buy, right? That was exactly what's going on, and Google may stop dealing with that or want you to deal with that. So get ahead of the game. Okay, let's talk content. I know we're kind of moving through the time here, so I'm trying to get through it as quick as I can. It's a lot of information. If you want to do content right, you want to make sure that your content solution supports both AI-enhanced content and data-driven content. You don't want to do AI only. AI-only content can get you in trouble, and it doesn't really have all of the SEO features I think you need, and it doesn't really allow you to fully integrate your data and what exactly you're selling and your current prices and your current reviews and all that kind of stuff it's harder to do. I've seen people do AI only on some of these pages and say, let's try to make something real generic, but it usually ends up being real generic, and it's not enough of help. And I think there will be likely penalties on that kind of stuff as time goes by. So you got to be careful, and you want to do a combo. You definitely want a solution that can allow for unique content to be created based on the category of products. Like if you're selling boats in one part of your site and you're selling tents on another part of your site, then you don't talk about those the same way. One's about water sports and one's about camping. They're different, right? So you want to make sure you can control that and make sure the content can be relevant to the category and the specific combo of filters that you're doing. You want to have something that can create unique content per page, and I think you really only need about 40% or more unique. It's okay to have some template-driven content that inserts variables into it. That's fine. We've proven that works with our clients many times. But you want to make sure at the end of the day, holistically, that whole page is at least 40% different than the next page that's in the same category but with slightly different filter settings, so that you don't have too much duplicate content situations happening. Dupe content purely will never work, and we all know that. So creating different kinds of content, as I mentioned earlier, you want something that can create some paragraph content, some FAQ content that's marked up. Something that can leverage your business priorities. You only want to mention your most important products, or you only want to link to your most important categories, or so on. But that's all about business data behind the scenes that you want to be able to leverage some of that, so you're not just randomly linking to the products in alphabetical order or something like that. You want those cross-linking abilities, so you want to be able to be in a paragraph and link to related categories or other deeper pages that are maybe children of that particular category page. That stuff's really, really, really helpful. And then includes the vital SEO features, like make sure it's got schema.org markup going on inside the content, especially around FAQs and things like that. So this is a link down here you can go to later, but this is an example of some of the AI generated data-driven combination content that we created. So you can go take a look at kind of the way that we did that, and Tyler and the others can answer more questions about how that works in the breakout. All right, the keys to using AI for content. Do not, as I said before, use 100% AI generated content. Make sure that you don't generate content without guardrails. So you want to make sure that if you instruct the AI to do something, you're giving it some parameters. It's usually should use your data, your categories, like only talk about these categories, only talk to these types of customers, only use these price ranges, things like that, so that you really don't let it just go wild. And then make sure that AI content doesn't directly reference, don't generate content that doesn't directly reference your products or your other categories, because it's fluff then. It's not seen as engaging content. User can't click on anything. That kind of stuff is helpful. So if you can, try to generate a combination of a programmatic content block, data-driven content with some human optimization for the SEO optimization part and some AI for the unique part. And putting all those together can be really effective. Use that. Make sure you want to use your product data. So you do want to link into your top products. You use it to mention the price ranges that you have, things like that. And then really try to think about using AI only for what it's best at currently. And I mean, currently, it's like today, 2 weeks from now, it may be better at something else. So you're going to, unfortunately, have to keep up with what is it actually good at, as opposed to what it's not good at. And I don't have enough time to go further into that one on that one. And then ensure that you have something that it's going to refresh regularly. That's a big signal to Google that if you have fresh content coming in, every week, 2 weeks, every month, it shows you're paying attention. There's a freshness benefit that I've seen over time to having content that does change and get updated. So if you can include that, then do. All right, let's take a quick poll here. And I mean, we're getting close to the end here. How have you generated content in the past? And just select any of these that apply. And I'll let the pollster go.
Again, that should pop up for everybody. We'll give that a few seconds to start populating.
I'm going to see where we are on time because I don't know.
We're at 2:43, so we got 17 minutes left.
All right, so we should get to the end here, which I think we're right there. Yeah, we're right at the end.
So yeah, looks like, about 34% say AI and data-driven plus human edited, and then also human written are still your top.
Great. Yeah, that's great. I'm really happy to hear that because, AI only is dangerous. And I think we've all been warned about that. So good. Well done, team. Okay, so if you take nothing else from this presentation, take this. The SEO optimization, the trifecta, right? If you have basic SEO optimization handled on all your search result pages, your SEO landing pages for those deeper filter category pages where it includes the exact keyword targets, you've got unique content about that and internal linking bolstering that page, that's going to increase your reach. You're going to be able to compete in niches of the market that your competitors aren't going after. So I think that's a really good opportunity. Doing that the content that's required for that long tail thing will actually help combat AI encroachment. What we've seen with a lot of our clients is that they're getting cited into the AI results. Now, AI is only doing AI overviews for maybe 15% of searches. And in my experience, it's mostly informational searches. So it's not a lot of transactional or commercial searches yet, but that's coming. We all know that that's coming because Google needs to make money and they think this is the way to do it. They'll figure it out. But the more you have that the AI can grab onto and include your content as part of its summarization and then cite your site, you'll get presence in those results. And I think that this longer form content can help a lot with that if it's done right. You already have the foundations you need. You have an e-commerce platform that can likely create all these pages and all these combos. Now it's just a matter of getting the engineering teams on your side or working with a vendor to put in those enhancements to help you add that content, help you add those links and that kind of thing. But you have the foundation, so it's there. And as I was just saying, third-party tools can help you overcome some of those resource or budgetary limitations. Sometimes it's pretty helpful because if you're working with a team that is dedicated to this kind of thing and has a lot of experience with this kind of thing, you get a better result. Absolutely, you can do this in-house as long as you understand some of the basics of what's important, which is the whole point of this presentation. But don't worry too much. AI isn't quite there yet, so we're not going to have to worry about that. I love how it spells stuff like this, camp during more. That's awesome. So thanks very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I hope it was very helpful. At the end of this, we're going to jump into a breakout room, but I'll let the SCJ team to kind of follow up with that. But if you want any questions answered, you can come to us, request a consultation. No obligation. I'd be happy to just answer some questions.
Awesome. That was great stuff, Waylon. Thank you so much.
You're
I'm
welcome.
going to go ahead and open the breakout room. And so you should get a pop-up that says join a breakout room. Just click the breakout room 1 and click join. There we go. I see the gentleman headed over there. So we've got the market page team hanging out in there ready to answer your questions. So with that, Wayland, we stayed here so that we could answer their questions, huh? All right. So let's get to it. All right. So we get these type of questions in almost every webinar, and I love it. So are you able to provide some reasons that I can provide to leadership on why we're spending our time on site search function that'll help drive organic traffic?
Absolutely. When I speak to CEOs, CMOs, CPOs, all those C-level folks, the things they care about are things like brand awareness. Okay, organic search is a great way to increase your brand awareness. If you're showing up in hundreds of thousands of more search results, even if they're not clicking on you, but you're getting the impression they're sometimes clicking on you, like it's still increasing the brand awareness around that company. So that's one big reason. The second big reason is SEO is by far and away the lowest cost per customer acquisition. It's the cheapest channel out there. So if you can build that foundation, you will be an evergreen source of inexpensive new customers, new business. Those are probably the two things that make them the most excited. Because if it's a cheap customer and acquire, costs less, you don't have to maybe spend as much in other channels. That's not always the case, but it's definitely a cheap cost of customer acquisition. There's more reasons than that, so I'm happy to talk to anybody anytime after.
So Kathy has a question. What would be a way to see if a competitor has multiple pages for filtered products?
Right. So the checklist that I had in my deck there that went down that little table is a way that you can kind of go through what you're looking for. But then when you go into what I do to find out if they have this page is first, you can just go through their navigation, right? And just click on multiple filters and then look at the source code or look at your SEO tool to see, is this page indexed? What is the H1? What is the page title? Things like that can tell you if they're doing it on a search result page. But in order to make sure, you need to go to Google and use the cite command and put in cite : put in that competitor's domain space, and then enter your keyword, enter your 2-filter, 3-filter phrase keyword, and see what pages Google has indexed for those keywords. If it's a 4-filter keyword and they're only ranking a 2-filter page or indexing a 2-filter page, that's a sign that they're not going that deep. Hopefully that makes sense.
All right, let's see. Bridget's question, for those search-generated pages you recommend to no index, are you suggesting the meta robots no index or disallow the URL paths in the robots.txt?
I think you could do either. I am nervous every time I let engineering get into robots text because sometimes somebody gets in there and puts the wrong instruction in there and disallows all the good stuff too. So be very careful with the disallow. The meta robots no index is just as effective when it comes to those search result pages, though. That should be just fine.
Let's see. I got a couple of rather lengthy questions, actually, too. So let's throw. I'm trying to read through this, Wayland. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's a long one.
Throw it up there and I can see if
we're going to throw it up. Let's see.
Right.
So, James, we're going to give Wayland a minute to read through your question.
Down here. Yeah, so it's a great question. We've had the same challenges in developing good AI output for our product. And what we've found is breaking it down into stages, or if you can, use agents. Agents are an effective way to kind of have the content, specific things done to generate content about, how do I describe this? Like one agent can do like the draft. The second agent can do the SEO optimization. The third agent can do the rewrite and QA. The fourth one, so if you can design it that way, or you can do it in kind of staged prompts of your own, where you take the output from the first prompt and run it through the second prompt and things like that. So I think you're on the right path here with this. It's hard to do that in an Excel file at scale, though, right? So that we built a tool that basically writes the prompt from your data for every single page, and then does all that, like rotating through it all. So all that can be done. Millions of pages can be done at one time, but that's harder to build.
So Joe Goodman asks, how do you balance custom merchandising of categories with more of an SEO filter focus without cannibalization?
Right. Good question. So if you're there's two kind of ways you can do that. I mean, you could have your merchandising on typically the higher level category pages mostly, right? So the 1 filter, 2 filter, because that's where most people are going anyway. When people are getting down deep and they're looking for, I want a 60-inch brown wooden outdoor bench, right? I already know what I want. You don't need as much merchandising at that level. What you need is to be able to rank so that the person gets into your site in the first place, finds exactly what they were looking for. You're going to be more likely to convert that anyway. So it's more of a strategic approaches. I would do the merchandising at the higher level and do the SEO long tail deeper levels. Obviously, you can optimize those higher level category pages for SEO too, and you should. But the SEO part of that, in those cases, the content for that needs to be further down the page, because most of the time, if you look at Amazon, for instance, there's not a lot of content on their higher level category pages. It's mostly about getting people where they want to go, or showing the latest sale, the latest deal. That's what's mostly going to happen there. And it's a very competitive space, so your domain authority has a lot to do with kind of how well you rank on those high level categories. So I'm really more advocating for spend your SEO time deeper, do the right stuff up top, but you can't, you're limited. You're going to be limited. Hopefully that answers your question.
All right, so let's see. And James, you don't ever have to apologize for putting long questions in there.
Not at all.
We'll gladly take them. Sometimes it just takes us a minute to get through them. All right, so let's see. So Bibu asks, can we distinguish between internal search and filter pages for primary SEO landing pages?
Yes, but I wouldn't use. So what you're talking about is, your internal search is going to generate a dynamic page, but your filter page is going to generate a kind of controlled version of the same kind of thing, perhaps. The canonical URL is a lot harder to manage when you are indexing those internal search result pages, because it could be about anything. So you don't know what URL is going to exactly get created every time, so you can't really map that to some other place. That's why I really recommend no indexing dynamic search result pages, and instead intentionally building filter pages you know the URLs for, or SEO landing pages that you know the URLs for. Let me read the rest of your question though. Yeah, I mean, it's again about the ability to implement canonicals right. I mean, yeah, Google will respect it, but if you can't figure out, these 10, internal search result pages that are basically the same should map to this one other page. And that's really hard. Like we've literally spent, 60, 70-hour projects helping big clients like comb through all that data and try to group keywords together and all. I mean, it was a nightmare. So I've seen a lot of other clients allow those to be indexed. And, the unfortunate thing is, like, sometimes those internal search result pages rank well because they're exactly what people are searching for. They are searching for cheap, LG monitors or whatever it is. So you don't want to lose that traffic. So there are ways and tactics to deal with that and to kind of get control of that. But I'd have to meet with you and see what's happening for you. We have helped our clients get 40% more of those pages indexed and ranking, and it's meant huge increases in traffic to really control those. But again, there's got to be the right strategy. It's kind of a multi-level strategy to deal with those.
Excellent. All right, Wayland. Well, unless anybody has any more questions, I think we've gotten through them all.
Great.
Right.
Yeah,
And
Tyler put a link, I think, in the public chat if you want to, chat with us or whatnot, or ask me any more questions. Feel free to go there.
he did. And I would say, since we still have people in the breakout room, we definitely don't want to close early, because if we close, we're going to kick them out too. So,
Nope, let's
Wayland,
not.
we still got like 5 minutes. So let's talk through, is there anything, and let me pull this down. Is there anything in the presentation that you want to touch on again, or that you want to, review, or you think that that's it, pretty good to highlight for those, going back to their desk today?
Are there any more questions about how to do content right or internal linking? And I could talk a little bit more about internal linking. There's stuff there I didn't cover.
Yeah. I think
I'll
that
just
would,
jump in, I guess.
yeah, go ahead. It's
Yeah.
it's a question that we do get often, so I think it would
Yeah.
be a good place to stay.
So let's talk quickly about internal linking. I'm going to show you something here so we can kind of have a visual. All right, so there are two kinds of internal links. There are the kind like this that are related, or category links that go down to other categories. There are kinds like these are like also like that. Like this is popular parts for the Chevy Camaro, and so it goes down to very related links. These I call related links. But there's a second kind of internal linking like this, which is done with our advanced internal link solution. So you'll see that this is about Chevy Camaro, but these are linking to Mazda 2005 Mazda 3 starters or other things that are not contextual to this page. The value of stuff like this is I can use every page on the site as inventory for links to send to pages that need a minimum number of links or even more, right? Because this is all about controlling your internal page rank. This is a huge benefit to you, especially if you're going to go long tail and go deeper and add, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of additional pages to your index on Google. This is critical. Doing this kind of thing to make sure all of those pages get enough links and internal link signal from other pages. It's a great system because you can really send a couple of different link variables. So we like, or keywords, like we do 1989 Mazda parts, but we may also on another page use find or shop or buy or near me or whatever variations of that are still appropriate for that page. We can put as anchor text on other pages, and that kind of thing is very strong. It's really good for Google. It's a great way to solve indexation problems. If you you have a lot of pages that are out there, but they're just not getting indexed, this is a big way to combat that. Even if you don't have content on them yet, you can still do this kind of thing, and that will get some of them ranking finally, because it gives Google a stronger signal. There's a lot of these deeper pages, on most e-commerce sites, they really don't get an internal link from somewhere. There isn't a link somewhere on, Nike or even Adidas that's going down to that, men's white size 9 running shoes. There's usually not that level of linking. Some sites do have that, but this is definitely a good strategy to add to your arsenal.
That was very helpful. Thank you. We actually did end up with one more question. I'm going to throw it up real quick. So Randy is asking, works for a laboratory supply business, and Google never gets our industry right.
Yeah.
Sure, you're not the only one, Randy. Yeah,
no, that's a tough industry. We've actually consulted with a couple of companies that are in your space, and I have to get more specific to understand what you mean by never gets your industry right. But I'm assuming what you mean is like they don't rank the right keywords, or they don't index the right page for the right particular combination of supplies that you're selling or whatnot. There may be ways to fix that with the internal linking, with an internal linking solution, because you can get very specific with your anchor text and really say to Google, this page is about exactly this thing, and do that over and over again, and it helps Google kind of understand what it is. But it also depends on how people are searching for your laboratory supplies. So I'd need to do a bit more research into kind of what are those common ways and what are you trying to accomplish. I'd be happy to again take a look at the site, and no obligation. You don't have to work with us, but I can definitely take a look and see if I can help you puzzle it out.
Awesome. All right. With that, I think we are, yeah, and Randy said that you got that exactly right. So that is the issue that they're seeing. So
Yeah.
before we let everybody out of here, make sure you check your handouts tab. There are a couple PDFs from Market Page that, further information, help you really get off when you get back to your desk and get started. So with that, Randy, sorry, taking the question. Whatever your name is, Wayland, tell the people where to find you.
Yeah, we're at marketpage.com. So it's pretty easy to find us there. Or I'm on LinkedIn under Wayland Myers and also Market Page, so you can find us there. It was really great to meet you guys, and I really appreciate your time.
Awesome. Same here. Thanks for sharing all your knowledge. Thanks for joining us
Pleasure.
there, all of our attendees. And we will see you at the next SEJ webinar. With that, have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Wayland. Bye, everyone.